I want to talk about something that could be considered a milestone. But do I think it's a big milestone? Even though nothing I say is financial advice? That's debatable, but actually the CEO of VeChain hypothetically thinks that way because very recently, Sunny Lu, who we all know is the CEO of VeChain, he did comment how VeChain Kit V2 is officially out, or should I say he posted this, right? He also said that this is a big milestone, a full UI revamp, so user interface revamp, improved developer experience, and a bunch of new features that makes building and using VeChain smoother and more enjoyable. So when I take a look at something like this, do I think it's a pretty big milestone in and of itself? Again, I think that it's not necessarily the biggest thing of all time, but if the CEO of VeChain seems to think it's a big milestone, I guess I'll just take it at that. Because when I take a look at VeChain, we take a look at what they did with Hayabusa, right? That recently went live when it comes to VeChain, and then we see something like this as well. I find it pretty interesting what VeChain is doing because, yeah, sure, VET, its primary native token, it's not doing good currently. It's around 30 times lower than 30 cents actually, as we speak. But then at the same time as well, kind of my perception is that when it comes to a lot of projects as of right now, they're not doing the best. But at least when I see a project, despite times that aren't looking that positive, especially because of the altcoin space still improving, still doing something, that at least keeps me a little bit, I think, enthusiastic in terms of the project. Now, I don't only just hold VET, by the way, right? I don't only just hold VeChain. However, for me, it is one of the things I'm waiting for. It doesn't mean anything could happen to it, but I'm just still staying patient nonetheless. But also, kind of like a main complaint that a lot of my friends like to tell me is that, wow, like the market cap as of right now is not doing good when it comes to VET. I'm totally aware of that, right? Like, for instance, if we take a look at it, the current market cap of VET is like slightly below a billion. It's actually around 900 million. But the thing is, when I take a look at something like this, kind of my perception is that if I am able to hypothetically dollar cost average at a lower market cap than before, would I be complaining? Now, if my intent is to exit, then no, right? I'd be complaining about that. But if my, again, intent is to dollar cost average, if I can dollar cost average into a project that I like anyways at a lower market cap, I don't know if I would be complaining too much if that is hypothetically the case. But even besides that as well, when I take a look at VeChain, I mean, let's just take a look at what it did in the past 2 years, I guess, right? If we take a look at where it was back in December of 2024, it kind of followed what a bunch of other altcoins did, which was like sort of this moment of brilliance, but not really. Like we saw the market cap at that point slightly above 5 billion. But kind of my perception is this, like right now we're below a billion, right? So we're approximately 5 times lower than that. Again, the market cap that where it once was back in December of 2024. If let's say I had 3 options like Ethereum, Bitcoin, or should I say VET, right? And let's say for whatever reason in a make-believe scenario, they could only just go back to where they were back in December of 2024. Like Bitcoin is not over 5 times lower than where it was back in December of 2024. Also on top of that, Ethereum is not over 5 times lower than where it was back in December of 2024. Well, VET is actually around 5 times lower than where it was back in 2024, right? Actually, more than 5 times lower than that. So that's just kind of my perception. In a make-believe scenario, if that was hypothetically the case, right, they could only just go back to where it was back in December of 2024. I don't know if I would necessarily want to be choosing something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, but that's just my perception. I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but that's just all purely hypothetical in my perspective. However, here's the thing as well. When I take a look at VeChain just as a project, it's not focused on the most interesting market of all time, but I think it's a market that has more stability because it's not, centered towards a trend or something that is just cool for the time being. Like being focused on supply chain management, it's nothing necessarily that cool, I think, right? But then it's more so kind of something that has this sort of presence, which we've seen many decades ago. We still see that presence right now, and who knows moving forward if that could be the case, but it wouldn't surprise me just because supply chain management, like a lot of businesses in one way or another, they could hypothetically try to improve their supply chain management, I suppose. So when it comes to VeChain, I like how they're focused on more so of a stable, I guess, niche, as opposed to some other projects out there. They're focused on a trend, but what happens if that trend is no longer trendy, right? That's just my perception when it comes to this. And even if I take a look at VET just overall, for example, at the hypothetical idea of 30 cents, the market cap would be around 26 billion. which is not a groundbreaking figure by any means. It's not going to break any records or anything like that. Like that's still around 80 billion less than what even BNB reached in terms of market cap at one point back in 2021. And for a project like this, which isn't necessarily focused on the most interesting thing of all time, I still, am hypothetically maybe thinking about that. Doesn't mean it could. However, who knows? This is just my mindset. When it comes to VeChain as well, I think where it may lack in terms of popularity and in terms of cool factor when compared to some of its other competitors, what I think it makes up for is actually the alleged, I guess, reliability, or if that's what I even like to call it. Because if I take a look at the VeChain Thor blockchain, right? If I just use this as an example, if I said something has had zero network outages ever since 2018, personally for me, I would find that to be a pretty fascinating achievement because I'd be like, really? 2019, 2020, all the way up until right now, we're almost in 2026. So no network outages? We see a lot of projects out there have network outages, but actually, allegedly, VeChain Thor, or should I say the VeChain Thor blockchain, supposedly zero network outages ever since 2018, which I find pretty impressive. Now, again, it's not the most popular out there, but that's still pretty impressive, I think, in the grand scheme of things. And I think VeChain, sure, it's not like the coolest project again of all time, but I do like seeing that. And also on top of that, in terms of their sort of efforts in terms of, I guess, advertisements, I do also find it pretty cool because, for instance, we know what they did with the UFC and also Power Slap. And even if we take a look at Sonny Liu, supposedly he has this pretty close relationship with Dana White. So when I take a look at something like that, I do find it, pretty cool. And also, even Dana White, like quite a while back ago, right? He mentioned in a interview or something like that like how VeChain was the only thing he was holding. So yeah, I don't know if that is the case or what, but at least from what I can see, at least from what he said in that interview, if he says something like that, I just find it pretty interesting. Now, also on top of that as well, when I take a look at VeChain, people like to tell me, okay, well, how about beyond, let's say the UFC or Power Slap? Well, actually, if we take a look at it, they also have had historical partnerships with like H&M, PwC, or should I say PricewaterhouseCoopers. We take a look at Deloitte. We take a look at BMW, right? There's a lot. They're just too much for me to just memorize like that, but those are just the ones I remember straight off, right? But yeah, besides that point, when I take a look at VeChain overall, I haven't given up. Now, it's easy for me to, I guess, just give up. It's easier for me to give up actually than to still believe in it, because if I give up, I could just easily exit and that's it. But then kind of my mindset is this: even though I could do that, I don't want to do that, and I haven't done that. And the reason why is because even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything, right? If I, let's say, just exit and I'm waiting anyways, let's say I have to live my life in 2026 and all this, right? I have to make it through January, February, March, May, June, July, etc., right? Basically, I have to make it through that. Whether I'm holding or not, I'm still going to have to be living my life throughout those times. So personally, kind of my mindset is I individually, right, want to at least be waiting for something as opposed to not. Because whether I'm in this space or not, the market's going to do whatever it wants to do. Now, me waiting, though, it doesn't mean anything could happen because there's over 600 million owners within this space. I'm just one person. I can't do anything. So whether or not the market wants to go down or hypothetically wants to go on the opposite direction, it's going to do it with or without me. So that's just kind of my mindset. Personally, I'm just waiting because I like to be waiting for something, at least. That's just my perception. But yeah, that's about it. And I wanted to make this video to talk about this milestone that Sonny Liu recently announced, which again is the CEO of VeChain. And yeah, I hope you all have a very nice day.